Hey everybody out in YouTube land. I'm doing a little catch up on my my work truck, my Toyota Tundra, and bought it used about 2 or 3 years ago. 2 years ago, had like 130,000 on it. It now has 147 on it. The no markings under the hood as far as whether the timing and belt and water pump are done. So they're supposed to be done, I think, every 80,000. And being 147, I didn't want to push my luck. And so we're having at it, putting a timing belt in. It has a few pieces that come off, just a few, but it's really not that bad. You just take your time. It does come apart. This is gonna be like a little, I guess you can call it like a how-to, or just what I did. How's that? I went and bought the Haynes repair manual doing a timing belt. It's horrible. It's ridiculous because it refers you, like, for each piece that it tells you to do. It's like, say, remove alternator. It tells you to go to another section to go see how about removing an alternator, how to remove the power steering. So you have to jump around all over the place. It's useless. There was better stuff online as far as I did look up, did a search on it, and a guy had a nice pictorial of it. But I didn't see anything on YouTube. I saw a bunch for like Tacoma V6s and those kind of things. But this is going to be one, I guess, kind of sort of on a Tundra. It's wise to do the timing belt and the water pump at the same time. The water pump is hidden behind the timing belt, so you have a bit of a pile to dig through to get to. Let me put a light on you. Your light? Yeah, we got light. All right. You got a bit of a pile of stuff, you know, a good 1.5 foot of material to remove from the front of the motor before you can gain access to it. I do have it stripped down to the point where it's at its furthest. Everything is off, including the water pump, and I'll just do a little summary of what I removed and how we went about doing that. First thing I did was, it's actually sitting on a lift, and disconnected the negative on the battery terminal. And very first thing I did is I yanked the skid pan off. While the skid pan came off, I put a tray underneath it and loosened the pet on the bottom of the radiator, let the radiator start draining, and then I popped the 4 10mm nuts off the fan and got the fan out of the way. After that, the radiator was pretty close to dry, and popped the radiator hoses and the 2 trainee cooling lines. They're hanging down here. I actually got them stuck together with a, where is it? No, it's right under that power steering pump, but under this hose it goes back to the other hose, and I just have them tied together with a piece of brass tubing and put their clamps back on them so the oil doesn't come all pissing out of them. So pull the radiator out after that, after the hoses were taken off, and got that up out of the way. Give you plenty more room. Sometimes when you work in close proximity, the book said you didn't have to take the radiator out, but I always hate trying to do wrenching alongside the radiator. You always get those razor cuts on your hands, and they kind of suck. Plus, you don't want to damage your radiator. Fortunately, I did do that because the bottom pulley on this thing, this being the bottom pulley, and that being the nut, was on there very tight. They said there's a special tool that they lock around them, and they put a brake bar on to loosen them, but I went with first an 1/2 inch impact gun. That didn't work. And then I went to a 3/4 inch impact gun. That didn't work. So that guy was still sitting in there while the compressor was building back up, and fired up the MAP gas, and while I was in the center there, I just kind of heated around the center of just the washer part of it, and then concentrated just on the head. I didn't go crazy, and I didn't get the thing glowing red because you don't want to start burning out the seals on the front of the crank and all. And plus the dampener has a piece of rubber in there. You don't want to get that hot and have that get destroyed. So after that came off, the compressor built all the way up to full pressure, and I went back with the 1/2 inch impact gun, and it was able to zap the thing off with a little bit of heat. Then I went and got a puller. Went to go pull it off. It just came right off. It didn't, you know, in my case, I didn't even need a puller. It just kind of, if I would have tugged on it with my hand, it would have came right off. So if not, you would either go with that kind of puller, or it's got the 2 holes in it that you put 2 bolts in it and you know, draw out the center, the old steering wheel kind of looking pullers. So the puller, the pulley was off on the bottom, and then I just started taking off all the cosmetics on the top, which is basically, you know, your your air intake. There's a bunch of like small plastic covers, and I got some of those out of the way. Then I dug into the actual, grab a flashlight, it's on the bench here somewhere, it's in my pocket. The power steering pump's got to go. The alternator that's hanging down below has got to go, and the AC compressor, they said, had to go. The power steering and the alternator are fairly easy to take off. They're pretty much, they have these bolts that just kind of slide off the front. You can slide them out and drop them down. Don't have to take any lines off. Don't have to worry about the alternator. You know, if you're stressing any of the lines, you may want to tie it up, but it seemed like it was hanging okay out of the way, so I left it alone. The AC compressor, one guy was talking about, he said that was the biggest pain in the whole job. I was kind of looking at trying to figure out why they would have to pull the whole AC compressor out. I don't know what the reasoning was behind that, but I was able actually just to take out this front bolt and this front bolt. The bolts are coming in from the back side, and took those two guys out, and that's really the only thing that was kind of holding it. There's like aluminum cover that kind of bridges all over this between the water pump and that. It just slid right out of the way, and then I was able to see the belt all the way around. So don't bother pulling the whole compressor out. Besides that, some of the bolts that hold the compressor are blocked by the cooling lines, the refrigeration lines coming down, and you'd have to lose the charge on your system, or sit there and just try to work the bolt back, move the compressor out, move the bolt back. Just a pain in the ass, and it wasn't necessary. I was just going to wait till the last minute. If I had to do that, I would have. Again, not necessary. When the belt is on here, you got to kind of use your imagination. Of course, it wraps down around the bottom. There's an idler pulley here and an idler pulley here. Wraps up to one cam and comes down, back on the idler pulley, back up the other side, back down around the bottom of the crank. The kit comes with two new pulleys, and one of the pulleys is adjustable. I shouldn't say it's adjustable. One of the pulleys is the tensioner. You see how this one moves back and forth right here, and imagine that there's a pulley on it. And underneath this, where you can kind of see that bolt sticking out, coming up from the bottom side, let me shut the light off. Coming up from the bottom side is that little hydraulic tensioner, a little pressurized cylinder. And that little pressurized cylinder is right here. So you just take those two bolts out, you let that thing come out, and grab the rubber piece with it too, and that will allow I'll show you over here, this pulley, which is what was there, to relax, and then you're able to take the belt right off with your hands. This one's also an idler pulley on the other side, but it's non-adjustable. The kit comes with the new pulley and the idler pulley, the tensioner and the idler pulley, sorry, and the new belt. So that's kind of where we are right now. I did do some drawing of how the serpentine belt was, because you always think you're going to remember, and sometimes there's not a decal under the hood and you kind of scratch your head for a little bit. So I left some pieces out of it, being the obvious things like the pulley covers that come off. There's a timing cover on the bottom, and all this stuff is held on with like little 6mm screws. Basically just covering those belts so you don't see them. There's the bracket I was telling you about where the AC compressor went into, and that was able to come off. That's the bolt that went through the AC compressor, and it just came straight out. Kind of looks like a water pump, doesn't it? But that guy, here's the tensioner for the serpentine belt, and I also grabbed the new serpentine belt. The water pump is also recommended to be changed at that time. Kind of looks just like any other, kind of looks like a Ford water pump actually, but it's just buried so far back behind everything. It's not like a time and chain car where the pump's in front of the chain. This is behind the belt, so if you have a failure, everything has to come all back apart again, and just to change the water pump. So for the price of the pump, which I think was like $100 right around there, it's good insurance, because if you got 147,000 on it, at some point it is going to fail. So that's why you kind of splurge for the pump. And with that, it comes with of course the gasket cassettes and the O-rings and all, and just clean them up and put your mastic on it. I thought at first somebody might have even done one, because you look at the old pump, there was a big thick section of rubber sealer around his throat, and it looked like it was kind of, you know, backyardish, but it's never been apart. It was all Toyota parts, so just the way she was. And I probably should do the same thing. It would suck if it leaked. But that's where we are right now. We're down. I can call the job halfway done, I guess, because we're halfway there. The next step is going to start cleaning up the pump flange and getting the new pump back installed on there, and so start reassembling everything. As I do have a car show to go to tomorrow, and it's already like 7 o'clock at night. I'd like to see that we get this puppy done. One other thing I should mention, I'm not sure if I did, when this pulley was on here, and it has the scale on the back, just set it right to 0, and with the covers off you can kind of look up and you can see if your white mark and that tab are lined up, and that white mark and tab were lined up. That's your two cams, making sure that they're where they're supposed to be, and they are, and the bottom is where it's supposed to be, so when you put it back together you shouldn't have any issues. The belt actually has markings on them which will line up to them, and it'll kind of help you to keep from losing it, but I don't think we're going to have much of an issue. We'll just have at her and make another video when I have everything minus the covers probably back on, and just do a little show and tell. Thanks for watching.